Hello and welcome back to Culz Book Reviews. Since today is September 30th, which is the anniversary of the day James Dean died on his way to the races in Salinas, I figured I would check out a book about James Dean. And I picked The Death of James Dean because it was supposed to be about the crash and, as you can see, the untold story behind the mystery. And I guess we'll get into that in a minute because it might be quite misleading if that's what you're looking for. But like I said, we will get into that. Let's take a quick look at the cover. Okay, so as you can see towards the top, it says the best narrative yet of Dean's final 10 hours. We'll get to that. Then it gives you the title, The Death of James Dean. What really happened on the day he crashed? The untold story behind the mystery. Yeah, we will get to that, let me say. And then we obviously see this picture of Dean, and then it gives the author's name, Warren Newton Beath. Now on the side, we kind of see a little bit of the fade of the picture onto the side, the author's name, and then The Death of James Dean by Grove Press. Now on the back, we actually get something kind of neat. We get a picture of Dean, as you can see. And this was actually on September 30th, 1955, so the day he was in the accident and died. But you can see Dean right here driving, and you can see the famed Porsche Spider. Obviously the one that was known as Little Bastard, or number 130. And then just below we actually see a brief description. Elvis Presley's Worship of Dean. I actually completely forgot that was in there. Alright, we'll get to that. And then, yeah, I got this off Amazon. It looks like it did come from a used bookstore. I've had this for a while. Just never really picked it up because I kind of figured I knew everything there was about the crash. So on Goodreads it does say 240 some pages, but here it is actually only 200, so I don't know if there's just different versions of this book, or if I just got one that was missing some pages, but mine is only 200. Now, for the majority of the book, it is just writing, as you can see. Some of the chapters are weird, and I will definitely get to that. But towards this middle section, you actually get some kind of interesting pictures, unless, I have a lot of James Dean books and stuff like that, so perhaps I've seen stuff. But there's James Dean's house, or I should say his Uncle Ian's house that he grew up in, and then just a picture of downtown. And then you get some different headshots of Dean throughout his acting career. And then you got Dean and Natalie Wood on the set of Rebel Without a Cause. And here you got a picture of Elizabeth Taylor and James Dean. And on this side you got a picture of Dean with some of his racing trophies. And then as you get later in, you obviously get to pictures of the crash, which I think everyone has seen these by now. Right here you got the speeding ticket, which was well before the crash. And then a picture of where the crash happened on this road right here at the junction, where Turnipseed was turning this way and Dean was coming down this way. Here we got another picture of the Porsche, and then the final picture of Dean as he is loaded into the ambulance. Right here we got obviously the sketch of what happened. So this is where they say the crash occurred. And as you can see, the skid marks look like he had slowed to probably maybe make the turn, and then or saw Dean and then try to correct it, but at that point he had hit Dean, and you can see how far his car went, whereas Dean's went way over here. And then again, just pictures of the wreck, and then some other art. There's Vampira, a bust of James Dean, as well as some pictures that we've probably seen, and then obviously Dean's headstone. So earlier I had mentioned the writing style, and one thing that was strange was just size of chapters, I guess. And like here we're on chapter 4, very next page, chapter 5. And I guess it's okay in some books, but man, this book almost felt disjointed at times, I will say that. Where, it would go from talking about Dean the morning of the crash to like completely off topic. And the crash, as far as in the book, happens really early on. And we've seen this in other books that we've done, like The Day Kennedy was shot, where it worked because so much was still going on. But unlike that book, it feels like once Dean dies, and I guess you get a little bit of the court and a little bit of stuff happening after, it's more about people that were obsessed with Dean. And to the point I was like, was it the author? Like, was the author talking about himself? I don't know. Because it says not real name. So I don't know. We get like 3 different characters. About halfway in the book, I'd say, at least from pages 100 on, I would say, going that way, you start getting these 3 characters that are just more obsessed with what happened in the crash, more obsessed with Dean, and then kind of just start spending tons of money to figure out what happened that day. And then it's never really even answered. Like, if you've read about the crash or if you're a Dean fan, I'm sure you already know what happened that day. You know, back in the time, a lot of people said he was speeding, but more recent, like, kind of reconstructions of the scene seem to say, well, maybe he wasn't speeding and it was just a mistake. You know, obviously Turnipseed just didn't see him. And pretty much a lot of people think Dean probably died pretty close to impact, if not, you know, pretty shortly after. In the book, it does make an argument that he died before the ambulances got there. But at the same time, I just feel like there wasn't a lot added to anything I've read about James Dean, anything I've watched with James Dean. This is not the first thing we've done about James Dean on our channel. Obviously, we've done our true history on the movie Life. We talked about the Life magazine article where Dennis Stock follows Dean and takes all these wonderful pictures. We've also watched James Dean Sense Memories. And at the end of the day, I've also read tons of James Dean books. Being a huge fan of Dean, I actually have most of the books ever written about him. This is just a few of them. My bookshelf's actually double stacked, so there's quite a ton behind. But I have a lot of the books about James Dean. And being that, you know, today is the anniversary of his death, I'm really quite disappointed. This is the book I'm sharing with you guys. Obviously, anything about James Dean I love to read, but this one was just kind of a slog. The writing was kind of all over the place. The stories were all over the place. You know, it talked mainly about people that weren't James Dean, you know. And that can work, like I said, when we did our reviews on the day Kennedy was shot or the day Lincoln was shot. A lot of it wasn't about Abraham Lincoln or JFK. But they worked, you know, the narrative flowed together. In this one, it didn't seem like we really got a narrative until we introduced 3 completely unknown people, which I'm still not 100% unconvinced that it's not the author, because the whole time they're talking about writing a manuscript for a book about the death or the, you know, crash of Dean, and I'm like, are we sure it's not the author? But anyways, you know, the beginning was just super all over the place. Yes, we did have a little bit about James Dean, and I will say very, very little bit, because the crash happens very early on. And then we get a little bit about his friends. And then, like I said, just dives full on in on these 3 characters, trying to go in and find out, you know, as far as what people found when they actually did investigations. Was there a cover-up, blah, blah, blah. And it's never really answered, you know. It's disappointing. I will say that. I am very disappointed. Unfortunately, this is the book I read. I feel bad because, you know, I see this picture of James Dean right there, and I'm like, no, it's not him. It's the author that wrote this book. And it is just, it's not good. I want to say, if you don't know anything about the accident, maybe a 6 out of 10. Maybe a 6 out of 10. But if you know anything about James Dean or anything about the accident, probably a 3 to 4 out of 10. For saying that this is the best narrative yet of Dean's final 10 hours, I would say no. You could find everything in this book in other James Dean books, and I swear at some point I'm going to share some more, some better ones, because I've read a lot of these. I just never got to this one because I figured, what else is there to know? And apparently nothing else to know, unless you want to know more about some people that were infatuated with James Dean. But I promise at some point we will share some much better books about James Dean. Until then, we do have a whole James Dean playlist. So today, if you want to go just, see some more stuff about Dean, due to today being the anniversary of his death, go check out the movie Life. We did a review on that. Go check out the actual Time magazine article. I'm sure you can find most of Dennis Stock's photos on Google now. And finally, go check out James Dean's Sense Memories. It's one of the better documentaries, I would say, and a lot of it is just talking from people that knew him. So I would say you could get a much better picture of James Dean from those things, and I promise in the near future, maybe even for his birthday, we will do some more reviews about books on James Dean that are much better. But until next time, if you want to see more Culz book reviews, click that link to your left. If you want to see more about what we're doing here at Culz Paranormal, click that link to your right. And don't forget to hit that like and give us a subscribe. And let us know, have you ever read The Death of James Dean? And secondly, more importantly, what's your favorite book about James Dean?